We're live. We're live. We're live. We're live. And today we have special guests that are with us all the way from Memphis, Tennessee. They are the proud pastors of the New Life Church of Memphis, and they are cutting edge. They are on the top of the totem pole as it relates to doing ministry during this pandemic. Their family, so we're going to try to behave as much as possible during this time. And so, but I'm grateful and thankful that in the midst of their very tremendously busy schedule, we've been saying this throughout, the pastors and church leaders are more busy now than they were before, trying to stay in touch with membership, reinventing the wheel on the fly. There was no 6 week preparation, no 8 week preparation. We just looked up one day and they said one of the most critical aspects of our function, Sunday morning worship service, is no longer a reality. And they have done that in excellency, as they have been doing ministry in excellency before that. And as we interweave in this conversation, we'll also look back and talk about the origin of this great, powerful ministry and how God used them to start it. But let me first start with you, Pastor Linda. Tell us how you're doing, and then Bishop, you can come in after that.
So, George, New Life knows me. When they ask me how I'm doing, what I say is faithing well. Whether I'm feeling well or not, my faith is intact. But today is a good day.
Amen. How about you, Bishop?
Doing incredibly well. Thankful for this day, man. Trying to power through the crisis, encouraging folks, staying healthy myself, trying to hold on to Linda. That's a full-time job. Yeah. So
I'm not sure. I am not sure if we're gonna get off on the right foot. Y'all are already throwing shade.
If you saw conversations with Linda Monday night, then you know what I'm talking
about. Tell us about conversations with Linda. Tell us that and when it airs and all about that, and we'll get a banner there to talk about that conversation with Linda.
So Conversations with Linda comes on at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time every Monday evening. And this past Monday, yes, was it? Well, today's Wednesday, so 2 nights ago, which you can go back and watch it. It was things that I would tell my younger self. George, tomorrow is my 53rd birthday. And so I look back at my 17-year-old self. I had a picture of myself. And I talked to myself and told myself those things I was proud of that I accomplished. And one was that I married the right person.
My Lord.
34 years later, I can tell her, yeah, girl, you did good. You did good. But as we got into the show, there were other things that I believe my husband is alluding to that I would.
He won't be saying again on the program. Yeah.
George, when you get 53, you are fully grown.
Yes.
Yeah, when you pass over 50, you are fully grown. So you can say what you want to say.
Okay. No, the views of Conversation with Linda have just went up. People print this off. At least put it on pause, children, and come on back. Come on back here to our session here. Bishop, you have been leading the full gospel, I think it's pastors division during this time, or is it
ministers and elders? Yes,
ministers and elders. Excuse me, ministers and elders division. What are some of the things that you have been pouring into them in light of this pandemic?
Well, to be quite honest with George, really trying to encourage them to be in ministry with their pastors. As you said a minute ago, we're working harder than we've ever worked before. And this is not read a scripture, prayer time in worship. This is pull up your sleeves, get your hands in. There's something for everybody to do. I've been trying to encourage them to make themselves available to their pastors to help in whatever they need done, virtual ministry, whatever needs to be done, that they don't sit on the sidelines, but they get involved, get active and involved.
All right. Talk to me about where you both times you heard the word COVID-19, coronavirus, and then the decision process that you all had to make as a relationship to your Sunday morning worship services and just retooling things for that.
Linda?
You want to go first?
Yeah, go ahead, man.
You know, as you said, when it all started, there was no ready, set, go. We were on go. And we just went into action with media team and with our online pastor. George, before all of this happened, and I continue to praise and thank God for this, that before all of this happened, we had already transitioned one of our pastors to the role of church pastor. And so everybody kicked in gear, and we had meetings by way of Zoom to make sure that nobody would be left behind with our leaders. Everybody reached out to their team, and that's how we are continuing to function. Is not just through Bishop and myself, but through our leaders. Everybody is holding down the front for the area that they're over, and so we're just making it happen every week.
Bishop?
Well, George, let me be honest enough to say when we got the word in March that there would be no more Sunday morning worship, that we would go exclusively to virtual worship, had difficulty with that at first. Of course, wanted everybody to be safe. I think, George, what you're going to find is that several pastors were in my position, that you wanted to protect the congregation, needed to shut worship down, did not fully believe that it would come to that place. And so, to be very, very honest and transparent, some grief inserted there, because you are so accustomed to the fellowship of the people and the interaction of the people that shutting it down, of course, was unimaginable, because in our country, nothing like that in our lifetimes had ever occurred. And you have to spiritually and mentally deal with that. And some people can say that they were ready to roll. We were, in terms of our pastor, our ministry, and church. That was fine. But me personally, along with Linda as a senior pastor, had to wrap my mind around that, because so much was unclear, uncertain. Okay, what how long are we going to do this? What does this mean? So it was difficult at first.
Wow. Tell us a little bit about the first Sunday, addressing the church, and the first time that you talked to your staff and giving them the marching orders of this new reality.
So let me be honest with you there, George. First sermon preached of the shutdown, and you'll get this because you understand the verbiage. I died a horrible death.
No, you didn't.
George, it was ugly. It was
No,
ugly.
he didn't, George.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Let's be clear about something. Bishop Kevin Willis have never died a horrible death.
Oh yeah.
If death walked in, they'd run out because they saw Bishop.
It would have got me there.
Go ahead, Bishop. Go ahead. He's still Baptist because he got that false Baptist humility. He may go full gospel, but he's still National Baptist. Come on back and finish, Bishop. We didn't mean. Me and Pastor Linda didn't mean to cut you off. We're so sorry.
It was difficult, George, preaching in an empty sanctuary.
It was difficult. I got you. Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, crazy. And so I could not relate, because let's be honest about the African-American tradition in terms of preaching. You experience it. I've experienced it. Everybody that you have interviewed in this church per se, and I'm talking about our ethnicity or what have you, experience call and response. And so you're accustomed to that with your parishioners. There's a certain synergy that takes place in worship. And it is so important to the articulation of the particular message for that Sunday. And George, I got to be honest with you, I was totally lost, because I was grieving the fact that there was nobody there. Uncertainty was really kind of shaking me. And I'm trying to preach, and I'm hearing things in my head in terms of response, and I'm not seeing anybody. And it made for a very difficult Sunday for me. talking to the staff, getting them ready was not hard because we were already moving. But that preach moment for me was very difficult. I know Linda was.
And baby, you know what I was thinking is actually, because I had been out of town, George, and I think that's what put me in a different headspace. I had been to Jamaica, and on that trip to Jamaica, I was with 20 some odd other pastors. So we were processing while we were, on the plane, all of that. So I came home ready to spring into action. And so we were in two different headspaces. However, that Friday night, we stopped service. We stopped actually gathering before there was a safer at home mandate, right? So I think our last service, baby, was it the first Sunday in March? Was our last service?
In March. Second Sunday.
Second Sunday in March.
No, I'm sorry. First Sunday in March was our last.
Our last Sunday. So that was before the governor said no more gatherings. And so on that Friday night, we had prepared a statement to say what we were going to put in place, the hygiene and the mask, all of that, for people to safely gather. And Kevin went to bed that Friday night after we recorded the message and that we were going to send out. Kevin went to bed, woke up the next morning saying, baby, I just don't feel good about gathering. So we had to turn that on a dime, bring our whole crew back together to record a new message to get the word out that that Sunday, the next day, we were not going together. That was at the time that there were some on social media criticizing people for even the thought, criticizing pastors for even the thought of not gathering. But we went ahead with our own convictions to say, you know what? No one else has to mandate us saying that it's better for us to go digital. It's better for us to go virtual. We're going to make the decision ourselves to tell our people, you are safer at home. And I am proud that we made that decision.
So George, I think the thing, and I appreciate Linda for what she just said, because she's right. George, I think the thing that a lot of pastors have not heard in these different forums, and I could be wrong about that, but I don't think that I'm wrong to the extent of saying it's okay to walk through the grief process of this. You're building and you're working and you're developing and you're trying to grow, and all of a sudden you walk into this whole issue of COVID-19 and everything stops as you know it, and it's changing what you've become accustomed to, and even more, it halts the progress of what you've been working on with your staff and your congregation, and you got to instantly change directions and get to a place where now you can service all of the congregation virtually or in whatever way that you need to do that. And I don't think sometimes we give pastors the opportunity to be transparent and sensitive and say, you know what, I had difficulty with that. It hurt. It felt strange. It was hard to do. That it's been a struggle. I think truth comes out, or healing rather, comes out of truth. And so hopefully it blesses somebody, because it was difficult for me. It really, really was. And even now there are times when I'm thinking, Lord, I'm looking forward to the return of the people, understanding that it's a new normal. I don't know if church will be what it was. I think that we've got to encourage people to come back to the sanctuary when it's okay to do that. But there's some, to be quite honest, who are going to continually subscribe to virtual worship. That's cool. But I don't think church is going to be what it was. And so my heart goes out to pastors who are trying to figure this thing out. Okay, what do I do now? And I had some pastors call me and ask me that question.
What was your response as you were counseling other pastors?
Well, the first part of that was dealing with the reality of the grief, and for one or two, the depression of the situation, dealing with that, helping them to get some counseling for that, saying to them, hey, it's cool to get some counseling for this, but you still got to be present in it to work through it. The second thing is being in a position where you're unafraid to ask for help in terms of how to forward yourself with that congregation. And I'm not just talking about virtual worship. I'm talking about everything under the sun. getting your offerings. People ain't coming to church giving an offering, so you got to figure it out with the different giving mechanisms. And here's the biggest thing, and then I'm through, George. The biggest thing is being able to sit down and reasonably think your way through the next 30 to 60 days without feeling the weight of trying to figure out the next year. Let's just take the first 30, 60 days to plot out ministry, to plot out a direction for how to speak to the congregation and service them correctly. Let's just take 60 days and we're good.
And we're up to that, because at first it was just week to week. It was definitely week to week initially.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Now talk to me more about the staff. I know you said you all were ready and that was an easier conversation, but what is that conversation? Take us into that room the first time you're meeting with your staff, and a lot of people responsibilities have to be realigned and things of that nature.
So we had to determine who was essential, because right now, when we're talking about, we call them gatekeepers, you all may call them ushers, and so that ministry right now is not on, is I won't say they're not needed, but they're not essential right now because we're not gathering, and our guest relations, which would be hospitality or greeters. So we had to distinguish who we needed at the table in the immediate time, and we began to gather. So we knew we needed to have music. So minister of music was present. I told you our church pastor. We had to deter our church administrator was there, and so we just kind of had this war room, if you will, that we came together along with our media team, and we all began to say, what will this look like on a Sunday? And so we put a big whiteboard in that room that Kevin is there sitting in now. There's I don't know if it's still in there, probably
it's
is.
The war room, yes.
Yeah, so we put a big whiteboard that's in there on the side of him, and we just began to map it out. And it was, going around the room. We both embraced collaboration. So it wasn't us just giving out orders. It was them saying, offering their input, giving their insight to what this could look like. We already we were already streaming, so that was not a problem. But how was that going? Were we going to pre-record or go live? And George, we started out going live. Can I tell you, that was a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Being in that sanctuary, and with the small praise team having to go up there, and then we were having to do something to make sure that, so you wouldn't see the transition. You wouldn't see me running up on stage, or you wouldn't see. So we had cords everywhere. We had cameras everywhere. So it was a lot. And, I can look back at it and laugh now, but we were sweating bullets that first Sunday we did that.
We had to redirect some folks, George. If you played wide receiver before COVID-19, guess what? After COVID-19 hit us, we didn't need any more receivers.
Yeah, we needed, and
we needed to redirect. Yeah.
And that's what we've been saying, George. Can I just say that that is really important. If I was to say something that I have learned, and I am definitely ringing the bell for this, I am sounding the alarm for this in our church, and I would share it with other pastors. We need to cross-train our staff.
Yeah.
Because that has been of necessity, and it has been beneficial to us, because when you got people and they can only do one thing,
and that one thing is not what you're needing to do,
right? And so we're saying, hey, we need, because we've been working, so everybody is, you get tired along the way. Somebody could get sick, and we thought about that, like, what if our media person, who is Quincy, who is a phenomenal media person, he wears many hats, but what if he gets the virus? What are we gonna do?
He gonna put on a mask and come to church and do it anyway.
So cross training, touch your neighbor. Oh, we don't touch our
No, we
neighbors
don't touch
anymore.
neighbor.
Tell your neighbor.
Text your neighbor.
You need to cross train, have your
Yeah.
staff to cross train. They need to know how to do somebody else's job.
I told you, no wide receivers. I didn't need any more wide receivers. Didn't need any more running backs. I need some linemen. I needed folk who could get on the line. Yeah, I know you're not lineman size, but you're gonna get on the line today. And the gift of cooperation is major, because that's what we had in our church. We didn't have people saying, I don't do this, I don't do that. I do it all. People were saying, I do it all. And we gave them the opportunity to do it all.
Right, absolutely. Tell me about some of the issues that you see prevalently coming up in the church, be it mental health, be it seniors, be it couples. What do you see as that you all have seen in your context, and how have you been trying to address those?
You want to go first?
No, you can go first.
I think that's a setup. So a couple of things from a mental health perspective. I think we need to prepare for post-traumatic stress syndrome. We understand that from a clinician or a clinical standpoint for men and women who have gone to war and they come back, and even though they're out of the war, they are still feeling the effects of it emotionally. They have triggers, and I don't know that we are understanding that. Yes, once we come out of this, we're gonna shout, we're gonna dance, we're gonna be happy, but then there's going to be some post-trauma effects, and people are going to, because now we're going to be, George, hyper vigilant, because when is the next thing going to happen? What is the next virus going to be? Or when is another strand going to appear? And so while we've been, we were out there initially, all pastors were telling the people not to panic, not to be afraid. What we don't see is the internal trauma of being panicked or fearful initially, being traumatized. And now I got a hypervigilance where I'm like, okay, what are they saying now? It was toilet paper. Whoever thought that we would be running out of toilet paper? I mean, now they're talking about beef or a food shortage by the end of the year. And so that we're on high alert. So how do I relax now? How do I find a level of balance and peace when now I have gone to war with a virus and I've seen death, and I've experienced not being able to go to church, and I've experienced having to watch funerals online versus being there presently? It's a lot of trauma in that.
It is.
Yeah, serious trauma. And she's speaking powerfully as it relates to, because it's from a mental health perspective, to our seniors. Even as we've given ministry to seniors during this crisis, this pandemic, I wish you could have seen, George, the fear in their faces, wanting to come back to church, wanting to be in fellowship, but so afraid that they're going to lose their lives in coming to worship. And here's the deal. We've got a tremendous senior population that's active and vibrant.
Yeah.
And in everything, and I kid you not, in everything, the old school church had the mothers of the church. We don't have that, obviously, but we've got a awesome ministry of seniors. In fact, they call themselves the Platinum Connection, which is so funny. But we fed them, and to see the fear in their faces concerning what's happening and the uncertainty for their lives. Are we going to be able to come to church? Is my life going to be in jeopardy if I come back into the sanctuary? And that's the reality. Everybody's not coming back quickly. And I've been hearing pastors talk about, George, how do we prepare for the comeback? Staggered seating, multiple services, parking lots. What are we going to do to accommodate people when we open the doors again? We're going to have to prove the cleanliness of the facility. We're going to have to position ourselves so people don't feel at risk for just walking in. we were joking about this the other day, George, but it's so true. And I told you that because I know you always opt out for the quartet. We're probably doing quartet singing. You can come help me if you want to. But big choirs, like we've got a large choir. That's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And so we're trying to prepare praise teams and whatever that you got to do for that worship time. But there's much behind the scenes as it relates to how this will affect our people mentally.
Can I add something to that as well? Because, babe, you talked about the seniors, and that is so, so true. And I've talked to many of them. But I want to add another layer to that, and that's our millennial group. When Kevin and I were in our 20s and 30s, we didn't know an unsafe world as they know it now. We were looking forward to
Awesome.
growing old and having grandchildren. We were looking forward to that. And our millennials are facing something that makes them feel like, is the world going to be around long enough for me to get married, for me to complete my education? Well, I'm hearing 20-something and 30-year-olds saying, I just want to be able to have some children. Like, I know it's got to end one day, but I want to be able to experience this, and I want to be able to experience that. I didn't know that at 20, in my 20s and 30s. I didn't feel that way. I had the expectation of longevity, but they are in a different reality, facing something that is so different. So when we talk about how we're going to minister, I think we've got to make sure we don't leave them out, because while they're healthy and they are feeling like, yeah, I can come to church, what they're uncertain about is their future.
Wow, that's great. We're here live with Bishop Kevin and Willis and Pastor Linda Willis, New Life of Memphis Church. They're sharing with us some great insight and perspective on how to relate and how to do ministry in light of COVID-19. I want to stick a pin there and go back and talk about the origin of this ministry. What led to that? What was a series of events in those early years? How did God shape you all to where you are now?
Wow. Interesting. Let me just say this, George. I did not ever once considered planting a church in the midst of turmoil, pastoring a church that had formerly been a deacon-led church, and had to fight in that church to lead that church successfully. And it just came to the point where it was crystal clear that the Lord was saying to both myself and to Linda, your time here is finished. I know guys say, I got called to the church and I can't leave the church. That was not my experience. I was listening for God because I felt like we were at an impasse and something had to happen. Something had to give. People were coming to church every Sunday. Church was full every Sunday. The anxiety I had about leading the church, preaching and being out front was incredibly heavy. Deacons didn't like me. Most of them didn't like me. And it was not going to be pleasant. The trustees were with me, but the deacons were somewhat in their mind wanting to lead the church. And there had to be a point of breakage. And the Lord literally spoke it into existence.
Wow.
That's candid, but that's true.
Gotcha. Appreciate you for sharing that. Pastor Linda, anything you want to add to that?
As I reflect, and we've now been at New Life for 12 years. We just had our 12th year anniversary in April. One of the things that I can see, it's like a bad marriage. When you get far enough outside of it, then you can see it more objectively. And I think we just grew apart. Um, and we had a direction we wanted to go in. There was more living inside of us. There was much passion. When we came there, I was 28 and Kevin was 33, I believe. And so we were just getting into the prime of our lives. And we just had so much to offer, so much that we wanted to experience with God. And that's not necessarily where they were. Now, for a long time, George, if I could be candid, I was angry about that because, when you've got opportunity and possibility, who wouldn't want that? But I'm far enough away from it now, 12 years out, to understand that they were just in a different season of their lives. It was an older church. It was a church that had lost its pastor to death. And so calling Kevin to pastor was not because they wanted to expand and shift and go to the next level and all of those other things that we say. It was not about that. Their pastor had died and they needed to fill that space. So we were just in different places. And so now I can look back on that and say, God used us to bring them forward from their place of grief, to establish them in a new era of the life, in the life of that church. That they had to move forward. They were looking at a new frontier, and then our work was over. We were released to move on. And that's how I look at it now. I didn't look at it that way 12 years ago, but that's how I see it now.
So when when churches say they're ready for change, you have to interpret that correctly, because you have to understand what change means to them. Because usually, what change means to you as a senior pastor, and what change means to people in that congregation is something totally different. I promise you. Let me say something that's powerful. Their pastor died, which means, had he lived, nothing would have changed for the most part.
Exactly.
And so here you are, young, and you're coming into a church full of seniors. They were very active, but they were definitely seniors.
Mm-hmm.
And you're talking change and what the Lord is showing you. And to them, it's wonderful, but it ain't necessarily what we're interested in. And these are the things that they don't teach you in seminary, George. They don't teach you how to successfully walk a church into relationship. They can prepare you to preach, but they don't teach you how to relate to people and to understand the grief that they are experiencing due to the loss of their pastor. And so you're the new kid on the block. We don't trust you yet because we don't know you yet.
Right.
We like you, but we don't necessarily love you. And we understand that this is a relationship that has a process attached to it. And so if somebody had come alongside of me and said, why don't you walk this out relationally for the first couple of years or so, 2 or 3 years, it'll go better with you. Because I think one of the mistakes I made as a young pastor, probably towards the end of the first year, started changing some things in the life of that church. But I changed them because to me, they were antiquated. They didn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I was in a different culture. I'm from Texas,
Right.
LA. Memphis is a totally different culture.
And we didn't know the culture.
We did not know the culture. No, we did not know the culture. I understood the history of the church, and this is interesting, but I didn't understand the culture of the church.
Mm-hmm.
Two totally different things. The history should have made me aware of what the culture was, but I was too young to get it.
And so George, we were like in family dynamics, in blended families, when the stepfather or stepmother comes in, taking authority, that's hard for the children to accept because you're not my mama, or you're not my daddy.
And I heard that.
Yeah.
They would compare me to the former pastor. Well, you're not. It's like, yeah, you're right. Yeah. But I didn't understand at that point what they were saying. We're grieving his death, and it's not you personally, but if we could get him back, you wouldn't be here.
Right.
And not because they necessarily had the perfect relationship with
No.
him. It's but of course people become saints when they die, and then we live with regret. So there were people who then regretted how they had treated him. And so we experienced all of that was coming at us, and we were just too young to understand it.
Absolutely. Wow. Well, let's fast forward and talk about COVID-19 and trying to predict the times, trying to understand what is the theological perspective behind COVID-19. Just as freely as you want, talk about what you see as God possibly saying to the church, to the world, to the political structure, and how you plan to shape new life in light of what you feel God is, how God is speaking through this virus.
I think it has made us sensitive, George. Again, I think we have come back to a place of vulnerability, and I want to explain that. For any relationship to be successful, one has to be vulnerable to another. I think we're in that place where we've got a larger image of God now. We see God totally different. There are people who've been in church, but they have been committed to church and not necessarily committed to God. And the church in and of itself is not changing COVID-19. We're trying to get our legs in this to see how we continue to walk through it until change occurs. But I think that we're seeing, or we're going to receive, if you let me say it that way, a larger image of God. I think, long story short, COVID-19 has erased some color for us as it relates to the church, because white folks are dying, black folks are dying. And it's put us in a position where we have to be sensitive even in our ethnicity and in race issues. It has made us think about the essence of all of this. What's most important? Let me be honest enough to say that is exactly what came to my mind the last two times I was standing in an empty sanctuary preaching. Lord, how are you going to use this moment? Because God is incredible for using difficult moments. And this is a difficult moment like we've never seen. And I think he's going to use it to make us stronger. That's the vulnerability. I think he's going to use it to get us past the jumping and shouting and stuff. I think he's going to bring us back center to some ideologies concerning first century church and how to minister and love folk and be sensitive to people in no matter what situation they're in. The church is going to have an opportunity to become real again.
Yeah. I agree with Kevin. I agree that there's a vulnerability now because the playing field has been leveled. You know, when we get in front of these cameras, in front of these phones and iPads, and we're all ministering to our people, there's no longer a mega church.
No.
Because people are church hopping. You know, they look at your service 10 minutes, they flip over to our service, you know. So nobody has a mega church right now.
Let me say this real quick. Here's what's humbling. When you're preaching on a Sunday, and it's recorded, obviously, but here's what's humbling. When you start talking about having thousands of members and you're on Facebook Live because they're watching the recorded program and you see how many people are watching, and they thousands. It brings up that wherever two or three are gathered.
Yeah, they may come back and watch it at a different time and your numbers go up. But in that moment, you're seeing the numbers pop up and you're like, Lord, is this all that's on here? I know we got more members than this.
I saw a church Sunday. I shall not name the church. I know they have, before COVID, they had 5,000 or 6,000 members. Watching the broadcast on that platform Sunday was like 125. And I was like, that is a major piece right there. That is also as relates to, we don't have mega churches. All of us are doing the same thing.
All of us are doing the same thing.
Yeah,
And as I said, they go back and watch, of course, and the numbers go up. But I agree with Kevin, the vulnerability and I think also what's valuable, that we understand, we've been talking about the essential workers, and now the world, our country appreciates the grocery store attendant and appreciates the truck driver. But I think too, for the church, we understand now what's valuable, where we have taken some things for granted. People coming, worship, you open your doors and they just come. We've taken those things for granted. I look at this. I don't get into whether God or made it happen and allowed it. That is not even. It is happening. So
It's
somewhere
here.
in here, God has at least allowed it. I'll say that much. But it's almost like God said, when I was growing up, my mother, if I got in trouble, she would say, "Now go to your room and think about what you've done." And I was sent to my room. It's like God has sent us to our room. Everybody came home, and we've been sent to the room to sit down and think about life and church and our fellow man and a whole lot. We've had nothing but time, um, because the world got quiet. With all the hustle and bustle of the world, you were able to escape a lot of things. You were able not to think if you didn't want to think. But the world got quiet. Planes were down. No planes flying in the sky, and buses weren't running, and children weren't getting up going to school, and traffic wasn't heavy. The world got quiet, and God said, "Now y'all need to think about some things."
Wow.
And my prayer is that we think long enough and hard enough and sincere enough that whenever we return, which I believe we will return, and we will be different. That the new normal will be us, about us, and not necessarily about the world. I need to be a new Linda when I return.
George, I've listened to several of these shows that you've done, and I appreciate you because I think that what you've done with Dr. West, Dr. Cynthia Hale, Dr. Samuel Chan, I think that you are helping to shape the theology of all of this. You'd be surprised how many people are watching you, and the information is so impactful, man, because there's so many people who don't know what to think. The people being pastors don't know what to think. And the regard I have for Dr. Ralph West, and certainly Dr. Cynthia Hale is just incredible, and countless others, most of which are some of my schoolmates. Dr. Jeffrey Johnson, Jeff and I went to school together at Bishop. I appreciate you because you're on all the time, bringing new voices and bringing voices from everywhere. And I don't mean new in terms of new to the, but I mean new in terms of we're hearing information we hadn't heard previously. And I appreciate that because, believe it or not, you are shaping the theology of this simply because there are people who may not admit it. They don't know what to do.
Right.
And so hearing a Ralph West talk you through it, or Dr. Cynthia Hill talk you through it, or Dr. Jeffrey Johnson talk you through it is meaningful. Because if you can just, glean some nuggets from any of these conversations, that's going to help you make another week. It's good, I promise you.
And I would like to add to that, George, that the 24-hour telethon that you did the other day too was profound as well. It was amazing because what we saw was you giving of yourself, right? And in a way for others, for the good of others. It wasn't to build your church. It wasn't to, expand your fan base, but you gave of yourself for 24 hours to help humanity. And you pulled us all in. So I agree with Kevin that God is truly using you
Yeah.
in a phenomenal way. That if this COVID virus had not happened, maybe not. Maybe you wouldn't have had time, because everybody's preaching, jumping on planes, going places. But you pulled us all in, and it wasn't about and it wasn't about our churches.
No.
And so, yeah, you're doing a phenomenal job.
So,
Phenomenal.
so is this safe to say, George, that you're becoming the Arsenio Hall of COVID?
Can we wait a minute there.
Are you becoming the Arsenio Hall of COVID-19?
I don't know if now, Kevin, you're dating us when you say Arsenio Hall. We got to come up
George,
at least to
George, do you not know who Arsenio Hall is?
Oh, I do.
I was say I know it.
I do.
Can he be Lester Holt or
Yeah.
Michael Strahan or
Yeah, Charlie Rose. Yeah.
somebody?
That was a compliment.
George, he said Arsenio Hall.
Oh man.
Every now and then Arsenio would have some meaningful interviews, but for the most part, it was hip hop and pop culture. So,
I tell you. Oh.
But
He gonna be the Lester Holt.
Bishop, tell us about how Full Gospel has been moving and helping navigate through this. And before you go there, tell us about the transition into Full Gospel and how God led you to do that.
It is because of Linda, because I had no intention. No intention. And I'm being straight about it. I had no intentions of visiting. I knew several of the guys because I preached around the country. So, I knew most of the guys, no intentions. And I went and sat in the back of the arena every time I went. And I would play golf and shop and then come to church at night. I'm just going to be straight up honest with you. Long story short, Linda asked me one day out of the clear blue sky, what are you going to do with Full Gospel? And I made the mistake of saying to her, George, nothing unless the Lord gives me something to do. But I was not asking anybody. I was not in pursuit of any positions. That wasn't on my mind. This church was new. And so I had a baby in my arms and I needed to nurture that baby and grow the baby. I didn't have time to do any other stuff. I did not have a presence in National Baptist simply because I chose not to. So when she asked that question, I didn't have any expectation that God was going to do something. I preached in a state conference probably 3 months after she asked the question. And then the end of that year, I was in Nashville preaching and got a phone call at 5 o'clock in the morning with somebody telling me, incredible man of God telling me God had moved on his heart to ask me to take a position. And I thought he had lost his mind. And that's basically how it happened. I was asked to serve in a position that had been vacated by another bishop simply because of now, if you let me say, the split of Full Gospel due to the leadership selection of Bishop Walker. And I stepped into it and progressed ever since. I love Full Gospel. I pledged my time and commitment to Full Gospel. Love my bishop. He is also my pastor. Most people don't know that. Bishop Walker is also our pastor. And we've got a great relationship with him. Great relationship with Bishop Morton. But I had no intentions, George, of doing anything. If Linda hadn't said something to me, I wouldn't be in it now.
And what have the fellowship been doing to help churches and doing this COVID-19? Anything you want to share?
There's a ministry, George, inside of Full Gospel, and it was established for times such as these, or a time such as this, and it is really, to be quite honest with you, flooding local pastors with information. That's number one. Of course, the different mechanisms of the banks and financial institutions now who are trying to help pastors take care of the churches and staff and what have you. So it's flooding with information. It is actually helping churches that cannot get those funds who are in jeopardy. It is really talking to pastors about how to reopen, when to reopen, and what to do to bring your people back. But more importantly, and I have to say it, talking to pastors about their own health, because if never before for a pastor, this can be a very unhealthy time. I'll say this and you'll get it, George, because you've been with me several times. My sanctuary has become a studio, but my home has become a studio. So I don't leave the church and leave everything behind. I've got this at my home as well, because we've done several recordings and what have you at home. And the gospel has been pushing that piece about disconnecting, the health, the eating, the attitude, all of the things that are important to yourself, to your health, because it's stressful. And so they've been pushing that button about what you need to do to maintain. Man, Bishop Walker's been on our case about what we're eating, about our sleep time, more than ever before. I mean, literally on our cases, because if we're unhealthy, we can't serve the unhealthiness of this culture and time.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. What is it that you all are thinking through the reopening? And how are you communicating to the church that? What are you thinking as it relates to that? What are some of the criteria that you're using to make that decision as it comes to getting back to what will become the new normal? Right now, we're dealing with abnormal.
Wow.
What will be the new normal? Have you been thinking through that?
We've been upfront, George. We've been very transparent about the decision concerning when to reopen, putting together a team for the sake of collaboration. We need all of these different minds helping us, because I said earlier, multiple service, staggered seating, people coming back in masks. We're going to try to do it in grand fashion. There's so many things that we want to do to freshen up the sanctuary so that when people come back, they feel alive again. They step back into something that's vibrant. But more importantly, this team is in place to help us think about serving people so that there is no fear and no anxiety about coming back, and that we can do this in a way where it's comfortable again. We needed other minds outside of Linda and myself to think this through. Also, the collaboration of some other pastors who are kind of grappling with the same thing. Okay, what are you doing? What are you thinking? How are you seeing this? What are you deciding to do? Because we're not the end all. And to be quite frank with you, the collaboration is important, because we need all of their minds to help us. Because I personally think it's going to take a while. As Linda talked about earlier, the middle aspects of this, it's going to take a while before people can become comfortable in a sanctuary again.
Yeah.
I'll add to that, George, that as we make decisions about gathering, we've decided to make that decision based on, of course, hearing from the Lord, but also focusing in on the disease, the data of the disease versus dates. So what has been happening in our state, in our city, governors, mayors are coming out with dates, and we are wanting to look at the data on the disease. Like, is it spiking again? What are our numbers? And so that's where we are, and that's what we feel comfortable with. That it's not about a date; it's about what's happening in the life of this disease. And the other piece is, you asked us, how are we getting the word out to our church? So we have, of course, our public forum, which is Facebook, right? We have a New Life page, but within that, we also have some private pages as well. And so we have a members only page where they actually have to be approved to be a part of that page. And what I mean by that approval process is just that they are a member of the church, because there are things that we want to communicate to our members alone. And of course, right now, Facebook and Zoom are the mediums that people are using, but we needed a way that they could go on, because more people use Facebook and are comfortable with that. We use Zoom, of course, for our smaller meetings, smaller gatherings, but we created that members only page so that when we want to talk to our members and share vital information with them, we can do it that way. We also have that for our small groups. So I have a women's ministry. It's called Sister Chicks. Sister Chicks has its own page. Kevin does men's fraternity. They have their own page, because we're still gathering in that regard in our small groups, and that's how we do it. So even we're looking at next week being able to have a members only meeting where we can give the membership an update on where we are now.
Oh, okay. Wow. And is that called Workplace by Facebook?
Now, I don't know, George.
Oh,
No,
okay.
that's not.
It's a members only.
Yeah.
You can set up your Facebook page, and it had open, just like you do your own personal page, where it's open to everyone.
Or open to a sector of people.
Open to a sector of people. And so what our team does is, when we got it started, we made sure our members understood that. We sent that out by email and text message to tell them we were starting a members only page, and that they had to go on there and ask to join. And when they asked to join, then our team checked our membership roster to make sure that they were members and approved them for joining.
Got it.
Mhm.
Got it. Thank you for sharing that. Talk to us about the uniqueness of you all pastoring as husband and wife. What's some of the pros of that? What's some of the, I want to say cons, but challenges, potential challenges for that?
So first of all, George, this doesn't work for everybody.
Don't do this at home.
Yeah. Okay, George, it wouldn't work for you. No, this won't. It doesn't work for everybody, but let me honestly say it is certainly our relationship. So this is what happened 34 years ago. This is not what happened 12 years ago. This is not even what happened in the life of the church I pastored before New Life. No, this is seriously our relationship. From the time of commitment to now, our space and time has been together, and it's because that's really the way we've wanted it. We work together, eat together. We're in meetings where we are in collaboration. The things we agree on, the things that we don't agree on, we're very honest about those things. We give ourselves the opportunity to be very transparent, like there is no facade. We're not doing she's my peach cobbler. No, that ain't what we do. No.
I can't believe you said that.
No, because we're real honest about it. No, we're real honest about that. And I think it has blessed our relationship. I'm looking at George one of that. You know how guys get over, ooh, she's my no. She's my wife, and I appreciate the fact of her personality.
That need to be your banana pudding or something.
Okay, I'm not gonna even go there. But
Okay, I'm sorry.
But it has worked for us. But George, I've now this will make you laugh. I have had pastors say to me, Kev, be careful, because Linda's so good at what she does working with you that my wife might get the notion that I want her to work with me like that. Please don't push this. And I'm like, dude, I'm not trying to push this on everybody. This is what works for Kevin and Linda. And for us, there's no other way to do it. But it does not work for everybody. But I'm glad that it works for us.
Pastor Linda?
Yeah, it does. It works for us. As Kevin said, it's worked for us for 34 years. When Kevin had his first church in Dallas, Texas, I wasn't even preaching, but I was yet very committed to his ministry, very committed to helping him do what he did. And so it's been my role And when the Lord called me alongside him to pastor, it was just the evolution
Yeah.
of what we had been doing. It just was the culmination of where our relationship had come from. Let me see. What if I could say the challenges of it is probably um, dealing with the stereotypes. I'll say this for me, dealing with the stereotypes, because I've heard guys, let me say that, I've heard guys say, anything with two heads is a monster. So, then that brings up that black girl in me that, want to say something. But I recognize that they are speaking from their own context. Our context is, when God brought us together, he made us one. So we're not functioning, we don't see it as a two-head anything. We see it as the oneness of our marriage. And so that's probably the first thing. The second piece is navigating these years that we're in now. The reality is, Kevin and I was thinking about this. This is we've been in New Life 12 years. We started 12 years ago. Probably for 10 of those years, those first 10 years, we left home together in the same car, because it was like, okay, why are we going to drive separate cars when we're going to the same place? It's probably been in the last year and a half or two that we even drive separate cars. And that's just because I don't necessarily go in as early as he does anymore. But it's worked for us. But as we navigate moving along in life, figuring out how long we're going to do this. Are we going to stop at the same time? What that's going to look like? Those are probably the challenges. But other than that, when we come to the office, it's a partnership. And so we sit down at the table and discuss business matters as partners. And we have equal say. And so that makes it a collaboration. And as Kevin said, when we don't see eye to eye, which that happens, because we are, while we are one in marriage, we're certainly individuals in perspective, but we function and we exercise the same practices that we use in our marriage, because not all the time in just the marriage, if we weren't pastoring together, do we agree. So when that's the case, we know how to retreat and pray about it, because that's what we would do in the marriage, and say, okay, let's table this for a minute. Let's pray about it and see. Now, surely God is not going to tell you one thing and tell me the other. And so that's what we do. And we stay with that process. We'll come back. We'll talk about it again. Okay, what is God saying to you? How and that we may have to go a few rounds with that, but it works. And I think it's a great model for marriage, if for marriage, ministry, and all of that, because no one person has all the answers. And it has created a different and new and fresh model for marriage and ministry in the life of our church. I see more of our couples being able to work together in whatever ministry they serve in, even in entrepreneurship. I see them, because what they see is, if Bishop and Pastor can make it work, we can too. And look, he needs me, George. He needs me. Don't you need me, baby? Because I need him.
So do.
Listen, it takes, the Bible even says, I ain't trying to get preaching, but the Bible even says two are better than one. Now, come on now. It really works, because there are times when, he gets tired or he has other things going on. When he went back to school, I held it down while he was going to school. I'm back in school now. he holds it down when I can't be there. When my mother, I had to bring my mother from Dallas to Memphis to take care of her. I said, "Look, I'm leaving the office. I don't know when I'll be back because I got to take care of my mother." Kevin held it down. When he was walking through his grandmother passing, because his grandmother passed the very next year, and he was walking through that and trying to be by his mother's side. I held it down, and that's just what we do. That's how we do it. People always say, well, who does what? We do whatever is needed. So the last few Sundays, he's been holding it down on Sundays preaching. I had Bible study on Tuesday nights. We're getting ready to flip it. I'm gonna be preaching on Sundays. Kevin, are you holding down Bible study? I think you got somebody else teaching Bible study.
Pastor Christian Education is doing Bible study.
But yeah, it works for us. And again, we don't prescribe this model to everybody. But what you see in our ministry is really a picture of what is in our marriage.
Talk to me about some of the people that y'all go to for advice, mentorship, be it preaching, be it pastoring, whatever the case may be.
Interesting question.
That is an interesting question because we've had this discussion.
Well, let me say again.
I go to Kevin, George.
See that right there, I just leave that alone. I go to George. I just go to George. I get all my information from George.
Listen, ladies and gentlemen, I can't get Bishop to answer my calls. Why in the world does he come to me for advice? I want the world to know this, okay? All right. So, once again, I'll put my question back on the table. Y'all have more time to breathe over it.
Joseph Walker, my pastor, is a tremendous confidant and great in the area of advice. When I went to Episcopal school, there were two men who became very important to me, and able to share with them things that are really powerful in terms of ministry. I've got friends who were able to talk to and share with the both of us and run things through. Everybody needs somebody. And
right.
The cool thing is we have several somebodies.
Yeah. And for different things.
And for different things. And that's cool to say because not one person is the end all in terms of information and advice and all of that. And I'm thankful that we have all of these strong people in our life as relates to preaching and all of that. It has been cool to ask those questions. And let me say this, George, because I'm at that place again as relates to preaching through this moment. How do we preach through this moment? How are we impactful in this moment? Are we supposed to preach to these folks the way we normally preach on Sundays? What do we change? How do we begin to speak this language or the language? Is there a different language needed? And so in pursuit of that now, because I want to make sure that we are impactful as relates to talking to our folk, empowering our folks in this time. And so need advice for that. Several people that that are really key. One of the great friends, and I don't mind sharing with you, I think he's a pastor's pastor, and that is Patrick Walker from DC. Pastor Walker is a pastor's pastor, and Patrick Walker is great for advice. He really is. He's just full of wisdom. Another gentleman by the name of T.L. Rogers, great for wisdom and advice. Senior pastor who is now emeritus, has blessed me tremendously. A young brother that you are familiar with, Brianna Mitchell, out of Nashville, Tennessee, in terms of the preaching idea. Brianna's is just tops, man. Eric Alexander out of Little Rock, Arkansas. just tremendous. Bishop Calvin Lockett on the other side of Nash. I mean, I could go. Bishop Ed Stevens here in Memphis, Tennessee. Pastor Paul K. Reed. I could just go on and on. And you need this this team of people to speak into your life, and you need to be in a position to hear them, to kind of navigate your way through some difficult situations at times. And it ain't have to be difficult. It's just the fact of you need to hear other people.
Right.
And I'll mention the name, Bishop T.D. Jakes, just full of knowledge as relates to hearing him speak theologically about these times and how to preach our way through it, lead our way through it, and all of that. I think it's essential to be able to hear. And then I go back finally, George, to what you've done in these sessions. They've been impactful for me. They really have.
Yeah.
They really have.
I have to add a few because Kevin and I share the same friends. So, of course, those names that he called, those are all my friends as well, and people who have been there for me. Brianna's, Eric, all of those, Pastor Rogers. We wait, we can't wait to go and spend time with the Rogers. We actually go and stay in their house. They're a couple that's older than we are, and they're just we've gone on trips together. But when we get together, the wisdom that comes out of those conversations is just invaluable. But I have to add to that, for me personally, especially being a female in the pastorate, Dr. Gina Stewart is one that I can pick up the phone and say, Gina, I just got a question I need to ask you. How would you handle this? And she's very knowledgeable, very wise,
full of wisdom.
Yeah, but also very personable. And so that has been a long friendship for me here in Memphis, Tennessee. But George, I can't even just talk about these people without mentioning those who impacted my life long before I got here. I gotta mention Sheila Bailey, Dr. Sheila Bailey.
Mm-hmm.
What you may not know, George, is when Kevin and I first got married, Sheila Bailey was teaching a class called Queen of Hearts. And I mean, we were in the first 6 months of our marriage. And I heard about the class and I attended her class. We were not members of Concord or any of that, but I attended her class, and it revolutionized my image and my understanding of marriage and my role as a wife in marriage. But beyond that, Sheila and I became friends. And back in the day when we didn't even know what a mega church was, but Concord was certainly it. Sheila Bailey took me under her wings. I mean, to the point where Kevin and I were living in a 2-bedroom duplex, and Sheila would take the time out to come to my home and let me sit at her feet and just give me wisdom. I tell anybody, Sheila Bailey taught me grace. I come from a strong, a background of strong women who are not afraid to say what they got to say. But Sheila Bailey taught me how to say it with grace. She taught me how to think about it before I said it, and the Bible talks about having discretion. And so I can't ever talk about people who are significant in my journey in ministry and marriage without mentioning Dr. Sheila Bailey.
I got to add also, Dr. Conway Edwards out of Texas, one community.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Conway is just a wealth of knowledge.
Yes, he is. George, you need to get to know Dr. Conway Edwards.
George may know Conway because George knows.
Okay.
I met him. I met him when he was at Tony Evans with Tony Evans ministry.
Conway's man, just crazy ministry in Frisco, Texas. Dr. Charles Martin in Dallas, Texas.
Great friend. And his wife as well, Dr. Earlene Martin. Back in the day, after Sheila, there was Earlene Martin, who made a great impact. Earlene was responsible. Sheila taught me grace, but Earlene taught me power, empowerment, to find my voice in ministry, to know my spiritual gifts. And so those people will forever live with me, and I
Oh,
carry them. I carry their words of wisdom with me even now as a female pastor.
you know, the two that live with me, George, and they're no longer with us, Dr. E.K. Bailey, who picked me up as a son, and I don't know why he did, but he did, and Dr. C.W. Clark. I don't have any idea why these two men picked me up, but they did, and made a contribution to my life that is blessing me even now. They've long gone to be with the Lord, but just still blesses me. So we have just wonderful people who've been in our lives, and certainly got to mention my baby brother HB, who we fight with all the time. Just powerful people in my life, and I'm thankful for that. Thankful for you. Joe, in all seriousness, George, here's what you do for me. It is, and I've said this publicly, and you laugh every time I say it, but it is so true. With the seriousness, and we're not even thinking about COVID-19. We're just talking about the seriousness of what we do on a regular basis. You have become such a brother to me, because in our times of sharing, we're able to be so serious, and yet in the midst of the seriousness, find those things that we can laugh about. I laugh more when I'm in LA at Sinai than probably anywhere else. I think that's a cool thing. Brothers don't laugh anymore. Everybody's trying to be so cool. I'm like, dude, it ain't that. You can laugh. And there's some things that you need to laugh about. Even in the midst of COVID-19, we can't lose our laughter. And we need people in our lives that bring joy to our lives. That's why you're family. I mean, you bring joy to us. Now, you give me a hard time, but you still bring joy to my life. So I'm thankful for that. It's needed. You know, we're still going off air. We're going to finish our discussion that we started last week during the 24-hour marathon. We're going to finish that discussion about the Pistons and all of that. But I ain't going to hold that against you. We love you in spite of.
I'm having technical difficulties. Y'all hear me?
Yeah,
No.
I got.
I didn't hear.
Good.
So you didn't hear Did you hear the last thing I said?
I didn't. Repeat it, please. I had to refresh. Don't do that, Bishop.
If you didn't hear it, I can't be held accountable.
Oh Lord, no.
If you didn't hear it,
I'll just have to go back on live and listen to it later, or YouTube listen to it
that's
later.
not a part of public record.
Because live didn't go down, and YouTube didn't go down, and Instagram Live was still working. So, Instagram Live won't work because it's looking at mine, so that won't count. But yeah. So you sure you don't want to repeat the last part? Just the last part, not the whole thing.
I, in the midst of thinking about people who are important to our lives, I was raising that you have been important to me, particularly in the midst of coming to LA, sharing with you, and the seriousness of what we do. When you and I get together, we are so serious, and yet we laugh about some of everything.
Yes, sir.
It is the power of laughter. And you know, I got to be real honest with you, George. I'm in so many different groups and meetings and conferences, and I walk out of there thinking, man, ain't no joy in nobody's heart. And so when we come together, we laugh about everything. I laugh more in LA than anywhere else, and I appreciate you for that.
Yeah, it's like a lot of people are not happy to be saved. It's like they're mad about it.
I'm mad about it.
You go to heaven, but other than that, it's a level of intensity there. Well, we can obviously go on and on and on. I wanna respect your times, and knowing that both of you are extremely busy, and close this with. I'll start with Pastor Linda. Let's go back to where we started with this conversation that you were having with 17-year-old Linda on Conversation with Linda. That airs every Wednesday on Facebook Live. Join the page, Conversations with Linda.
Every month.
And is Wednesday or Monday?
It's on Mondays.
Monday.
It's on Mondays.
My apologies. Mondays at 7 Central on Facebook. You can listen in from mental health to conversation with yourself. I was on there a couple of weeks to be to be used as a whooping boy to every.
You were used. That is a great description. You were used.
Conversations with Linda. Courtney is putting it up there. Courtney put everything up there, and we'll show that comment. Talk to us more about the conversation you had with 17-year-old. Give us 2 or 3 more highlights of things that you said. Oh, young Linda, that 17-year-old. Was she saved? Was the 17-year-old Linda?
No.
Oh, she didn't know that Jesus. Okay.
She was in church. George, she was in church, but she wasn't saved.
Lord help us.
Yeah, she was in church, but church wasn't in
So
her.
that means when I met you, you weren't saved.
Well, on record I was. On record I was.
Okay.
My name was written on high,
but
I
ladies and gentlemen.
I wouldn't conform to the image of
Wait a minute, ladies and gentlemen.
That's a song right there. That song in the old Baptist church said, "My record will be there, be his page dark or fast." So
I wasn't conforming to the image of Christ at that time.
Oh my.
Did we lose George?
No, I'm still here.
Okay, so you wanted me to give you some highlights?
Yeah, give us some highlights, and then after we get off live, I'm gonna revisit this when you were saved and not same conversation.
Listen, I just told her how proud I was of her, that she married the right person, that accepting her call to preach was the right thing to do. It was real. Going back to school was the right thing to do. But then I gave her some nuggets that I wish she had known at that time. And the first thing I told her was she needed to slow down. She was moving too fast, and she needed to dream bigger. I am a dreamer, but for a brief time, I lost the ability to dream. And so I would have told her to start dreaming sooner and definitely dream bigger. And the last thing I want to tell you that was a hit with everybody, one of the things was you don't need an apology to heal. And that has set me free in many, many areas and places of my life, that I could heal. I could make the choice. I could make a decision to heal, whether I had an apology or not. And I think that is so beneficial for people who have mama issues and daddy issues and church hurt and all of those other issues that we have, that we're waiting for someone, one, to validate our pain, and two, to feel some sense of remorse before we heal. And all we have to do is make the choice. As Jesus told the guy at the pool of Bethesda, he just said, "Do you want to be healed? Then get up and walk." And that has definitely set me free.
Oh wow. Bishop, as we prepare to close, give us talk to us about your call into ministry, your entrance into ministry, and some of the things that's yet on your heart to do that you've yet to do through ministry.
At the age of 12 was called, did not acknowledge it until 17, about to turn 18, and received the call again at that early age. Did not know what to do with that. Did not know how to talk it through, articulate what I was hearing the Lord say. And so I waited until I was 17 and was literally restless from 12 until 17. Officially answered that call at the age of 18. I have a love for pastors. I really do. I want to be a blessing to pastors. I think New Life is, I know New Life is an incredibly blessed church. And, but if I go back 12 years, George, planting was not easy. In the area where we planted this church, being Memphis, South Haven, what have you, there were very few at that time African-American plants that were successful, and we needed to be mentored, and we had a hard time finding mentorship. And I felt like that just should not have been. And a lot of the advice that we received was geared towards worship and not developing a church. And that's why I want to step in. Now, Linda's working on her master's right now, and I'm so proud of her.
No, baby. Linda
I'm
is
sorry,
working on her doctorate.
Doctorate. I'm so sorry. Forgive me, Dr. Linda.
Please, please, now give me
forgive
my
me,
just desserts.
You see what I'm up to. You see George rocking in his chair.
George, I told him when I walk across that stage, virtually or otherwise, he's gonna have to call me Dr. Linda for the first 30 days. At home, everywhere, he's gonna have to call me Dr. Linda.
So it can sink in.
30 days, Dr. Linda Memorial. Yeah, I'm with that. I approve that.
Go on, George. But I'm waiting. I'm gonna go back. But if I go back, I want to write on dissertation on this whole church planting idea and how to walk through this process, and how to understand what God is calling you to do and to do it in a way where it is very practically lived out. I mean, in a very practical way. Really want to do that. But I love pastors, and I think my life is called to empowering pastors.
Wow. Well, we are in agreement with that. You've been a blessing to so many. We are in agreement that this was a great time together. I'm so glad that I was finally able to get in contact with Pastor Linda and make it happen.
I told you he needs me, George.
This thing has been revealed to me on another level today. I tell you that. I always felt that way, but it's been revealed to me on a higher level than that. Bishop, we want you to pray us out of here. Before we get ready to pray, Pastor Linda, why don't you give us all of you all's info on how we could connect, website, service times, anything that you think we need to plug, and then Bishop, and then tell us about your upcoming, what you're working on in your doctorate as well, and how we can be praying for that, on what phase you are in that as well.
So, of course, you can reach us at newlifeofmemphis.org. And we do have a Facebook page, New Life of Memphis. I told you I'm on Conversations with Linda on Mondays, Central Time, 7 o'clock Central Time, 7 p.m. And we would love for anyone who is looking for an opportunity to view worship, to view us, newlifeofmemphis.org. And of course, we do have our Facebook page. Our service time is 10 a.m. Central Standard Time on Sunday mornings. And then at 6:30 on Tuesday evenings, again, that's Central Time, is our Bible study. We start with prayer at 6, and then we move into Bible study at 6:30. And so we would love to have you. I'm working currently, George, on my doctorate, DMin in pastoral care. My master's is in mental health and counseling, and I wanted to continue that, to complete that journey, and that's where I am. And so, if, as my mother would say, if the Lord says the same,
Yes.
2021, at least by the end of 2021, I should be able to be referred to as Dr. Linda Willis.
No, that's right. Bishop,
So pray my strength in the Lord, George. Pray my strength
we
in the
got
Lord.
you. We got you.
Lord have mercy.
And George, just in case anyone is watching us in the Memphis area, just want to tell you that our address is 6825 East Holmes Road, 6825 East Holmes Road, Memphis, Tennessee.
Amen. Bishop, can you pray us out of here?
Yes, short prayer. Father God, how we love you and we thank you for this day and for this time. We are acquainted with your word in Numbers 6 and 24. When you gave this word to be given to your people, you said that you would bless us and you would keep us, that you would make your face to shine upon us, you would be gracious unto us. You said that you would lift up your countenance upon us and you would give us peace. And God, we yet count on you to do that in the middle of this pandemic. Every word that you gave, we yet hold it in sacred trust. And we know that it will come to pass because we know you. Your blessings on George Hurt, our brother,
Yes, Lord. Yes,
and for
Lord.
all of those who are watching and listening. For those who have no idea what we're doing, we pray for them, for pastors and churches everywhere,
Yes,
for
Lord.
people who are believing you in the middle of all of this. We lift them up. And we pray, God, that we will see our way through it and that we will be stronger because of it. That's our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you all so much. Live
Thank you.
audience, we're gonna kick y'all out. I need a couple of seconds here with this Power Pack team. Yeah, we